They banned this guy. They took away all of his winnings. Why did Blizzard do this? Well, guess who owns a 5% stake in Blizzard?
Nothing about the NBA comes up. None of their players show up anymore.
U.S. companies operating in China have had to try to grapple with this for a long time, but it's all starting to come to a head. And I think the thing that has really brought it to a head is platforms. What happened? Why are we talking about China? Why are we talking about South Park? Why is any of this relevant? Okay, let's pull up this. All right, boom. It all started with our friend Daryl. He posted this October 6th. And so that was Sunday. Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong. This is the general manager of the Houston Rockets, big NBA team. Houston Rockets are big in China. NBA is big in China. He posted this on Twitter. Key part of the story.
And then very quickly deleted it.
And then very quickly deleted it because there's sudden and immediate outrage.
The cardinal rule of Twitter, nothing is ever really deleted.
And so what has happened since? I'm sure you've heard about this. Basically, the Houston Rockets have been banned from, all of the NBA has been banned from broadcasting any NBA for the next week
they
in
canceled.
China.
There was a preseason game with the Nets and someone else that was canceled. Basically, they're not going to broadcast it anymore.
Yep.
Tencent, who paid billions of dollars for streaming rights for the NBA in China, said they're suspending, at least for now. They haven't said how long, but so basically indefinite. If you look on certain apps like TikTok or the Houston Rockets, they no longer show up.
Right.
Whereas other NBA teams like the Warriors, you can still search and find images of players. But if you search Houston Rockets, there was an article on this today. Nothing about the NBA comes up. None of their players show up anymore. So
that's hilarious. So Tencent, big platform tech monopoly. We're going to keep coming back to Tencent. Okay. Tencent has, with these bannings, there's more from we've talked a lot about how basically it's really unfortunate that the Chinese Communist government is using platform tech monopolies to enforce and regulate their country and how people behave in China. And now they're trying to take retribution out on other people outside of China beyond just what's happening in Hong Kong or, with the Hong Kong protests, which we've talked about. So now here's the NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, saying, I think as a values-based organization, Daryl basically has an ability to exercise freedom of speech. Funny enough, Silver was actually in Tokyo while all of this is happening. And here are CCTVs, China Communist TV. I think that's what it stands for. We are strongly dissatisfied and we oppose Silver's claim to support Mori's right of free expression. We believe that any speech that challenges national sovereignty and social stability is not within the scope of freedom of speech. Okay, so there you go. The irony in all of this, there's just so much irony, and that's what we're going to get into. So there's more irony here, but love it how, there's free speech, but then there's these beautiful boundaries around free speech, as we've spoken about before. Okay, so this story continues. Now, there are all these bannings, but here is the biggest irony. The guy, Daryl, posted a tweet on Twitter about China, and Twitter cannot operate in China. They've banned it from China.
Right.
But immediately there is all this outrage on Twitter against Daryl. Immediately. Almost like it was coordinated. Okay. So let's look back. September 17th, 2019, China used Twitter to disrupt Hong Kong protests, but efforts began years earlier. This is from NPR and the New York Times reported on this. And basically, look at this graph down here. So they counted hundreds of thousands of accounts that Twitter and Facebook banned. Okay, hundreds of thousands of accounts. Twitter released the actual account names for 1,000 of these accounts, and then showed their history. And that's what this shows. So these accounts were created all the way back to 2007. You can see this.
What I think you see here isn't that these accounts were all suddenly created in 2017 and 2018. It's just that's when Twitter started catching on and actually paying attention after all the Facebook election stuff.
Right. So these accounts have been around for a long time.
Right.
They're created by the Chinese government or
state actors,
their subsidiaries. And so, they have some examples in this article about these tweets that these bot accounts are posting to put disinformation out there. And so this was banned in regards to the Hong Kong protests. We reported on this a few weeks ago when this happened, about how the Chinese government is both using the Chinese tech platforms to enforce this stuff, but then also doing activities on US tech platforms to enforce their, whatever they want. And this is the New York Times. Facebook and Twitter say China is spreading disinformation in Hong Kong. Okay, so going back to the irony of all of this, the poor guy Daryl posts this thing on Twitter. Twitter is banned in China, yet all of these bot accounts from China are then flaming Daryl and anyone else that agrees with Daryl and the NBA to explain why Daryl is wrong and Daryl's a horrible person for posting this and supporting Hong Kong. So now it isn't just the NBA. Blizzard, which we spoke about, has that server in Taiwan that people were, talking about from mainland China were able to log in. Now Blizzard bans this Hong Kong player who was playing in a big tournament
for Hearthstone, which is a big Blizzard game.
And basically the guy said, here, liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our age. And so they banned this guy. They took away all of his winnings, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They banned him for a year from being able to participate in future games. Why did Blizzard do this? Well, guess who owns a 5% stake in Blizzard? Tencent. Coming back to Tencent. Tencent owns 5% of Blizzard. They have a 4.9% stake in Activision Blizzard. Also, Tencent taking off all of the NBA streaming in China. This was interesting. I didn't even really know this. China has agreed with the UK for Hong Kong to be a capitalist democratic area until 2047. I didn't even know that was the treaty.
That was part of the terms of basically reintegrating Hong Kong with China from British control.
Yeah, we're going to give them a 50-year transition period. Interesting that the UK really isn't standing up for much on this. But anyway, all of this has come to light in the past few days. Last Wednesday, our friends over at South Park really, they just have a way of predicting this kind of stuff. I don't know how. But so they posted a great Instagram post, which says official apology to China from Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We too love money more than freedom and democracy. Oh God, you guys can read this for yourself.
So they posted this after the NBA stuff started blowing up the last couple of days.
It's a constant battle. Now, clearly, U.S. companies operating in China have had to try to grapple with this for a long time, but it's all starting to come to a head. And I think the thing that has really brought it to a head is platforms. And I think that's where you see this, where the Chinese tech platforms, the stocks are down. All of the Chinese tech platform stocks are way down over the past year and a half. We've been talking about this a lot. Whether it's Baidu, whether it's Tencent, or it's Alibaba, this type of activity is obviously stemming from the Chinese Communist Party. I don't think the folks in Tencent would do this to the degree that they're doing it if it weren't required. Yes. Otherwise, the company is going to get shut down, or worse, or you'll go to jail, or personal problems. And this weighs on the stock price of the Chinese tech companies. They have to do it. We've spoken about how this actually the ante has only been raised, and they're now putting even more people sitting inside of every one of these tech companies that is actively monitoring this kind of stuff, and now deploying and filtering and banning accounts and all these kinds of things. Tencent this is just one example of one Chinese tech monopoly, and the control that they have in China with the NBA playing, as well as the control that they have outside of China with the ownership interest that they have outside of the country, in this case, Blizzard. And you now see this in the movies. That's also part of what South Park talks about here, where whether I think Tencent has bought some movie studios.
Alibaba,
or maybe
also
Alibaba
has,
did.
They've both done a lot in entertainment, basically, and are ramping up their spending on movie production and content production.
Buying media entities or being majority investors in kind of Hollywood studios. And all of this stuff is now happening. And, it's going to be a very difficult landscape to navigate. The interesting thing is that the U.S. tech monopolies basically have been banned from operating in China the whole time.
Right.
So they don't really have much of, I guess they kind of have a conflict because they've always kind of wanted to.
They've clearly, Zuckerberg learned Chinese and they tried to get back in. I think what they probably come to the conclusion is we're never going to get a level playing field.
Right.
So
Microsoft, same thing. Yeah. Google left and then now is kind of trying to go back in.
And I think they squashed that last year.
If they didn't, then they have to now.
It keeps bubbling up because the market is just so big. If you can get in and get enough traction to get a level playing field, then the market opportunity is huge, just given the economy of China.
Yeah. Look, the Chinese government is very smart about how they cultivated their own technology industry.
Right.
And by preventing foreign firms from being able to just basically operate there, they were able to, put up a lot of walls and then let these tech companies be created to cater to the rising middle class in China. And they absolutely have the number 2 dominant VC tech community in the globe, far beyond where Europe is. And basically Europe didn't put up any walls. And now it's basically US tech companies.
Yeah, all the big US tech companies, the big tech monopolies basically have, like Google and Facebook, similar success in Europe. And in some cases where there's like hyper local network effects, like delivery services for food, you have your own European companies that popped up simply because they got there before, some of the big US delivery companies like a Postmates or Uber Eats got there. But even in other areas, then it tends to be, the same companies operating in the US and Europe. There's much more of what I would call a common platform market there. Whereas China has really separated it off. You're starting to see, India kind of considering these questions as well. Yep. And of course, that affects both the China and the US, which are both heavily invested in the big platform companies in India. So this issue isn't going away.
Hi, this is Alex Mozed. Thanks for joining us on Winner Take All. If you enjoyed the content today, which I bet you did, please comment, subscribe, and definitely message me on Twitter when we're doing live streams. Also, please note, all opinions expressed about stocks or public companies on the show are exactly that, opinions. This is not investment advice. Don't act on it. WisdomTree licensed Applico's Platform Insights data product to aid in the creation of the PLAT ETF. Thanks for joining us.